And we're live.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Good evening, councillors. I would like to call this special council meeting of March 7th, 2022 to order. My name is Sandra Easton, Mayor of the Town of Lincoln, and Chair of today's special council meeting. We're meeting electronically through Zoom during this declared emergency period. Members of the public may observe the proceedings by accessing the live webcast at our YouTube channel. Madam Clerk, would you please begin the national anthem? And councillors, I'd like to remind you to turn off your video at this time.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. Caparose porte l'Ibéria, il se porte la croix, ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep the land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
I'll just give everyone a couple of minutes to come back on. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
You're welcome.
I think everybody's on. Niagara region is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in a rich history of the First Nations, such as the Attawandarak, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The regional municipality of Niagara stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the land on which we live. I will ask the town clerk to complete a roll call of the council so that we can confirm attendance and quorum. Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Councillor Rajima.
Here.
Councillor Russell.
Here.
Councillor Pachariva.
Here.
Councillor Brunet.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Councillor McPherson.
Here.
Councillor Miklick.
Here.
Councillor Reimer.
Here.
Councillor Timmers.
Here.
Mayor Easton.
Present.
And we have quorum.
Thank you. In addition, I want to take a moment to welcome the staff we have joining us today electronically. Chief Administrative Officer Mike Krikopoulos, Director of Finance and Administration and Innovation Lawrence Wagner, Director of Special Projects Kathleen Dale, Director of Community Services Shannon Mackay, Director of Economic Development and Communications Paul Gianni, Fire Chief Greg Hudson, Director of Public Works Dave Graham, Associate Director of Public Works Jillian Harris, Legislative Committee Coordinator Deanna Phillips. IT staff are also in attendance. Moderating and clerking the meeting today, we have our Director of Legislative Services and Town Clerk Julie Kirkolos, and also joining us this evening, Regional Councillor Foster from Niagara Region, and from the Niagara Regional Police Service, Staff Sergeant Sean Perron, Police Services Board Member Jen Lawson, Chief of Police Brian McCullough, Deputy Chief of Police Brett Flynn, Superintendent Marco Giannico, Inspector Patrick McCauley, and Corporate Communications Manager Stephanie Sabrin. Welcome, all of you. As this is a virtual meeting, I will ask that we follow some procedures. Should there be a connection or service disruption for the chair, or if quorum is lost, the chair and or clerk will call a 10-minute recess to reconnect and to regain quorum. And if quorum is lost, the meeting will be adjourned. If connection is lost from the chair, the deputy mayor, who at the moment is Councillor McPherson, will resume the meeting. And once reconnection is achieved, the chair will assume their role. Each member of council who wishes to speak, press the raise hand feature on your video call. The clerk will track our speakers list today and then invite you to speak when I open for comments or questions. When I finish reading a motion and announcing the mover and seconder, the clerk will then call the vote by reading each member of council's name out loud. Please remember to take yourselves off mute during this portion of the meeting so that you can confirm if you are in support or opposed. And when not speaking, please remember to put yourselves on mute. Item number 5, council members' confirmation of agenda. We have an amendment to the agenda this evening. Councillor Mikulik would like to add a correspondence item for discussion that was received in the February 25th, 2022 council information package. To do so, we will require a 2/3 affirmative vote to allow the addition to the agenda, and if passed, the item will be placed under items for consideration. I have a motion moved by Councillor Mikulik. The council waive the rules to add item 1.3 of council information package week ending February 25th, 2022 from the town of Aurora regarding request to dissolve Ontario Land Tribunal under items of consideration. Madam Clerk, would you please call the vote?
Councillor Rajima,
Yes.
Councillor Russell,
Yes.
Councillor Brunet,
Yes.
Councillor Pachariva,
Yes.
Councillor and Deputy Mayor McPherson,
Yes.
Councillor Mikulik,
Yes.
Councillor Reimer,
No.
Councillor Timmers,
Yes.
Mayor Easton,
Yes.
and that carries.
Thank you very much, Clerk. Are there any declarations of interest, councillors?
Seeing none.
None? Do members have any announcements? If you do, your limit is 3. Yes, I see Councillor Regina. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to go through on behalf of the Lincoln Chamber of Commerce, some of the events that are coming up to keep them top of your mind. Wednesday, March 5th, there's a business before 9 at Conversations Cafe. Thursday, March 25th is the breakfast with the politicians at the Ramada Inn. Wednesday, April 27th is the mayor's luncheon at Rockaway Vineyards. Wednesday, May 18th is the Ontario election debate at Great Lakes School. And getting into June, there's a business after 5 planned at Cave Springs Campground. And Wednesday, June 21st, a business before 9 at Lincoln Public Library. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, I don't see any other hands. So I'm moving on to proclamations, and there are no proclamations this evening. And we have no, I'm sorry. We have no proclamations this evening, and we have no recognition and achievements. Under delegations and presentations, we have one presentation this evening. Madam Clerk, I would like to consideration be given to Regional Councillor Foster to delegate on this presentation as it appeals to Lincoln. Would you please take the vote on that, show of hands or whatever is appropriate?
A show of hands will be sufficient to allow the unregistered delegation. So if council could please raise their hand if they are in favor, that would be greatly appreciated. And that carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. It just makes it a bit more smooth. And so I want to, I'm just looking around to see who I see. I think you're all lined up at the bottom. All right, great. Our presentation this evening is from the Niagara Regional Police Service, and it has been a while since they've been here. And I think that this is I think this is the very first time that we've had the brass. I'm convinced of it. I think I did, the CAO and I had a conversation about that. So thank you very, very much for coming out. We certainly appreciate it. So in attendance, we have Staff Sergeant Sean Ferrand. If you wouldn't mind, Staff Sergeant, just putting up your hand, just so that the public know who's who. And we have Police Services Board Member Jen Lawson. Thanks very much, Jen, for coming. Chief of Police Brian McCullough. Thank you very much, Chief. Deputy Chief of Police Brett Flynn. Thanks very much. Deputy Chief Superintendent Marco Gianico. Thank you very much for attending, Superintendent. Inspector Patrick McCauley. Thank you very much, Inspector. And the Corporate Communications Manager, Stephanie Sadman, who we probably know better than everybody. Stephanie's doesn't have her video on. So I want to welcome you all, and Staff Sergeant Perron, you're the lead here this evening, as far as I understand it. But I do see Chief McCullough with some lights flashing around his square. Did you want to speak, Chief?
Thank you, Mayor. If I could just provide some opening remarks, that would be wonderful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Really appreciate the opportunity to join you this evening to really be able to share some insights into the Niagara Regional Police Service. And as you mentioned, I don't recall that we've had the command team at Council before, so we again appreciate the invitation. I'll keep my opening comments brief before turning the presentation over to the District Commander for 8th District, Staff Sergeant Sean Perront, who I'm sure most of you, if not all, are familiar with. When we look at serving our community as a command team, we have really three overarching guiding principles: assisting victims of crime, member wellness, and community engagement. Community engagement is not only critical to building positive relationships, but it provides an opportunity for us to hear from the community members as to what's occurring that we might not otherwise be aware of. As we see the lifting of COVID-19 restrictions, we're looking forward to being able to resume attending community events and connecting with members of the community that our members are really so proud to serve and protect. With me today, I'm joined by Deputy Chief of Operations Brett Flynn, Inspector Pat McCauley, who provides oversight for 8th District as the 3 District Commander, as well as Superintendent Marco Gianico. And as you mentioned, Police Service Board Member Jen Lawson, who's one of the 3 provincial appointees on our board, is with us this evening. When I talk about the important role of our district commanders, and in this case, Staff Sergeant Sean Perront, I often refer to them as the Chief of Police for the local area. As district commanders, they're available to connect with you, the Mayor, with Council, with the CAO, and members of the community and business owners to really hear directly about the issues impacting the community. It also provides that opportunity for two-way dialogue to hear directly from the district commander as to the various enforcement initiatives that may be taking place that you may not necessarily be aware of. I would strongly encourage that the mayor, councillors, and CAO Kirkopolis continue reaching out and connecting with the district commander. And I'm sure that Sean will be more than responsive in addressing any local issues. Having said that, I will turn the presentation now over to Staff Sergeant Sean Perront for the presentation and be available for any questions that council may have.
Thank you very much, Chief McCullough. Please go ahead, Staff Sergeant.
Thanks very much, Chief. Again, thank you, Your Worship, members of Council, for having us here today and giving us the opportunity to speak. Simply put, here's our mission statement. If you can go to the next slide. The Niagara Regional Police Service is dedicated to serving and protecting residents and visitors within the regional municipality of Niagara. In partnership with the community, we should provide quality policing services with integrity, diligence, and sensitivity. Next slide, please. As you're likely aware, senior command structure consists of our Chief of Police, Brian McCullough, supported by 2 Deputy Chiefs. Deputy Chief of Police Operations is Brett Flynn, and Deputy Chief for Police Support Services is Bill Forty. Next slide. So here's a quick overview of our current organizational structure. Much like many large organizations, it shows the scope of the services and areas of expertise within the Niagara Regional Police Service. From a uniform perspective, we have 774 sworn members as part of our authorized strength. From the Chief of Police, 2 deputies, 5 superintendents, 14 inspectors, 31 staff sergeants, 109 sergeants, and 599 constables. On the civilian side, we have 326 members consisting of 1 director, 12 managers, and 313 civilian support staff personnel. Next slide. Breaking down the organizational chart further, I wanted to give you a snapshot of the various programs that we have here in Niagara, from executive services, district operations, which is our frontline personnel, as well as operational support services. Investigative services are resources above and beyond the number of specifically assigned patrol officers able to assist with complex needs and investigations. These are units such as our Special Victims Unit, our Domestic Violence Unit, our Child Abuse Unit, as well as our emergency services, including canine, tactical officers, and traffic enforcement officers, to name a few. Most members of the public only see the frontline uniform officer driving within the community and answering calls for service. But at any given time, these specialty units can be called and deployed to assist where appropriate for a tailored response. Next slide. Further, we also have corporate services, technology services, and operational support in roles such as 911 communications, the real-time operations center, and our court services unit. To demonstrate how all of these units can work together at any given point in time within our region, I'll use the example of a robbery call with a firearm, where a suspect has fled on foot. The call to police starts with our communications unit, where that 911 call is received, processed, and dispatched to a frontline patrol officer. Depending on the location of the robbery and the information available at the time, our real-time operations center will immediately look to access cameras available in the area. That frontline uniform response is the initial emergency response. Officers will attend the scene, secure it, tend to any victims that may be present, and ensure public safety and look to locate the suspect. Our canine unit and our emergency task unit would be activated due to the suspect fleeing and mention of a firearm. Additional resources may be needed, and members of our traffic unit, for example, can be called upon to assist with a perimeter for our canine unit. District detectives or specialty detectives would be notified and would attend to investigate, interview, take statements, and conduct a canvass. Our forensic services unit would be called to process the scene and any evidence retrieved, and our corporate communications unit would be looped in to ensure that media releases are prepared and would respond to any media queries that may arise. When an arrest is made, that person will be taken into custody and brought to our central holding unit, where they would be processed by police officers and special constables. There's definitely a lot of areas of policing behind the scenes, not to mention our mechanics and staff and fleet services, our IT personnel, and pretty much everything. Our IT personnel who are responsible for pretty much everything from phones to cameras to computers, as well as our finance and human resources personnel, along with our career development unit, our recruiting unit, and members of our training unit, which all support our visible police presence. Next slide. So looking year over year, there's a consistent increase in calls for service within the region. 2021 from 2020, we saw almost a 17% increase, which can partially be attributed to initial dip in calls and service due to the pandemic, but overall an increase in call volume. Now, it's important to note that beginning in May of 2021, the NRP, through our communications unit, began a new set of priority dispatch codes, which included calls we term priority 6 calls. These calls do not require a police dispatch and were added to our call taking process to track incoming calls and better quantify the work being done. In 2021, there were 18,036 priority 6 calls throughout the region, And of those calls, minus priority 6 calls, there were 130,306 incidents, resulting in a 3.27% increase in calls for service over 2020 and a 1.13% decrease from 2019, which was pre-COVID. Next slide. And for numbers specific to Lincoln, as you can see, the town of Lincoln, a similar trend has occurred. And in 2021, when compared to 2020, we saw just over an 8.1% increase in calls for service. And in 2021, within the town of Lincoln, there were 361 priority calls. So if we take away those added priority 6 calls, we saw just under a 4.4% decrease in calls for service over 2020 and a 10% decrease in calls for service when compared to 2019. The officers assigned to 8th District are responsible for patrolling 619.52 square kilometers, which represents 33.4% of the Niagara region's square kilometer land space. And within that, the town of Lincoln comprises 162.86 kilometers of our patrol territory. Next slide. I was asked to provide data with respect to the number of mental health calls for service that our officers attend in the town of Lincoln. And as you can see, between 2019 and 2021, there was a 335% increase in the number of mental health related calls for service. While this seems high, to put it in context, the service changed the way calls for service are categorized in 2021, which again allows us to better track the types of interactions our officers have when dealing with mental health related calls. For instance, if an individual is violent or not violent. And this change has allowed us to better track our interactions and provide a more fulsome picture of the types of calls for service our officers respond to. It's also worth noting that although it may seem high, these numbers are relatively low when compared to the rest of the region. In helping our officers deal with mental health related calls for service, at the present time, there are 27 officers in 8th District who are trained in crisis intervention training or CIT training. This training requires officers to complete a 40-hour training program, which they are taught various methods to safely de-escalate situations involving individuals in a mental health crisis. In addition to CIT training, officers in 8th District can speak with members of mobile crisis rapid response teams working in St. Catharines, Niagara Falls, and soon Welland, who can provide them with additional resources on how to deal with an individual in crisis. Across the region in 2021, our MCERT, or Mobile Crisis Rapid Response Team program, diverted 71% of all mental health related calls, which totaled over 1,000 occurrences where an individual did not go directly to hospital. Next slide. In the town of Lincoln, when reviewing common criminal investigations, there was a 38.5% decrease in break and enters between 2019 and 2021, which equates to 15 reports, a 32% increase in motor vehicle thefts between 2019 and 2021, which is a total of 10 reports, a 63.5% decrease in theft from autos between 2019 and 2021, which totaled 61 reports. This is partly attributed to the proactive efforts on the part of our officers who regularly take part in the Lock It or Lose It campaign. There was also a 77.8% decrease in robberies between 2020 and 2021, which was 7 occurrences. And again, it's also worth noting that the actual number of reports overall is relatively low. Next slide. Officers assigned to 8th District take part in several crime prevention and community engagement initiatives throughout the year. In the town of Lincoln, for example, officers regularly take part in the Lock It or Lose It campaign all year long. And in warmer months, they conduct initiatives such as Operation Safe Play, which involves them conducting park and premise checks throughout the course of their night shifts in an effort to discourage disruptive loitering and vandalism in parks within the town. I myself personally work closely with Town CAO Mike Kirkopoulos and Director of Public Works David Graham to address concerns reported by residents sitting on the Beamsville Truck Bypass Committee and the Active Transportation Advisory Committee. Recognizing the fact that a number of issues reported by residents involve truck and traffic matters, officers in 8th District conduct 3 yearly truck safety blitzes in the town of Lincoln with our law enforcement partners from around the Golden Horseshoe. In the picture at the top of this slide, you'll see officers from the Niagara Regional Police, the OPP, Halton Police, the Niagara Parks Police, and commercial motor vehicle inspectors from the Ministry of Transportation taking part in Project Avoidance in June of 2021. This initiative involved identifying, educating, and enforcement in an effort to prevent large commercial motor vehicles that were attempting to avoid the MTO scales from utilizing roads within the town of Lincoln. The work of our officers is regularly highlighted on our Twitter account. It's at 8NRPS, which has over 1,100 followers. And I just like to throw in that it has the most number of followers of any district in the service. And with that said, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Staff Sergeant. All right, Madam Clerk, let's open the floor and see how we can make life a little bit exciting for our commander. Councilor Russell, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to the Staff Sergeant. Again, thank you very much for coming tonight with the presentation. I'm going to try to make this as complimentary as possible. I think the biggest concern that we receive from residents is that we wish there were more of you. And I think that is a positive statement as best it can be. I think that your presence out there is excellent. I just wish I knew what the formula was for allocation per resource to our town or to any population. So I wonder if you could just walk us through how staff are allocated, and then as we grow, what the expectation would be for more coverage. I wonder if you could give some insight into that.
Thank you very much, Councilor. Go ahead, Staff Sergeant.
Well, with respect to what we term the COP to POP ratio, the Niagara region has a population of 481,000 or so residents. And with our staffing levels in the Niagara Regional Police with sworn officers and civilian members, it translates to a ratio of 150 officers per 100,000 population, or 0.16%. But when you compare that to a population of 100,000 people, for instance, Hamilton sits at 146 officers per 100,000 residents, and Toronto sits at 167 officers per 100,000 residents, and London sits at 149 officers per 100,000 residents. So when you do the COP to POP ratio, as we call it, we're sitting pretty good compared to the other comparable services within our GTA area.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. Follow-up, Madam Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
So then through you, and I know our staff work hand in hand with you and your team as much as possible, and they're trying to be as proactive as possible with regards to traffic issues, speed mitigation. Is there anything that you can suggest that the town does to ensure that we are doing our due diligence to make sure that our streets are safe, that as our traffic is going to build over the years with the level of development that's coming, that we are being, again, as proactive as possible to make sure that we are again, making our streets as safe as possible for all of our residents, either through pedestrians, active transportation, drivers, truckers, everything. Any thoughts on that?
For sure. I mean, I know just myself coming out here a year and a half ago, my wife grew up in Beamsville, and the time we started dating 20 plus years ago, I can't believe the growth and development that's taken place out in the Beamsville area in particular. I do work, like I said, very closely with Mike Kirkopoulos and David Graham. Like I a couple emails back and forth with Dave today, and we're setting up quarterly meetings to discuss our traffic enforcement initiatives. And I have several meetings throughout the course of the year with Dave and his crew over there, and we're constantly flipping emails back and forth, rectifying issues. But Dave and I have a great relationship, and I think we're on the right course. Truthfully, like any concerns you folks have, feel free to reach out to me or contact Dave directly, and Dave and I have a direct line to one another, and we target those issues. And like I said, we use our Twitter account to show the public that we're out there doing it. And it also serves as a reminder to them that we are out there. If there's a problem intersection, officers are out there dealing with it. And it's a great relationship where the officers will take a picture of them out doing enforcement. And we get that out on our Twitter account and show the community or the particular neighborhood that's affected that we are out there addressing their concerns.
No, thank you. And I get it. I think your Twitter account is fantastic. I think it's a great way to engage with the community. And again, we do appreciate everything you do, everything that Dave does and Mike does to make sure that the issues are addressed. We just want to make sure that going forward, we keep those lines of communication open, and where the opportunity presents itself, again, if we can get more boots on the ground, again, the more of you, the better, because we feel that your presence is just absolutely incredible out there. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Russell. Momentum is certainly important for sure. And next is Councillor Bernay. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Staff Sergeant Perrant. Really appreciate you, all of you on the call this evening. It really shows us that, you really have a presence and a concern in what's happening. And we certainly do appreciate the relationship that we've developed through District 8 and our staff, including CAO and Director Graham. Through you, Madam Mayor, to Sergeant Perrant, you made reference to the 3 yearly truck and safety blitzes that have occurred. And they certainly have been paramount in getting dangerous vehicles off the road. I think the infractions that we've seen on all of those blitzes have been alarming, to say the least. Is there anything we can do to increase that number that's occurring 3 times a year? It's great that we're doing it, and we're certainly taking those vehicles off the road, whether it's brakes, whether it's permits, whether it's licensing. But to think that those vehicles are going up and down our areas into our downtown core is alarming. Is there anything we can do to increase that number from 3 to 6?
Well, there's a lot of moving parts to that. Like I indicated, we have police services from right across the GTA or Golden Horseshoe that come down and take part because our partners at the MTO only have so many inspectors available at any given time, and they patrol the territory from the Burlington Skyway right to the Peace Bridge. And they have requirements in those respective jurisdictions they have to tend to as well. So between that and getting all the other police resources together, it's a bit of a challenge to make everyone's schedule align. 3 is what we've been able to do so far, and we've partnered with our MTO colleagues and commercial motor vehicle inspectors here in Vineland, and we've introduced them to Dave, and we've got a lot of great programs that have come about through Dave and Nick Karakis at the MTO with respect to the scale and the avoidance issue at our project avoidance. We had a camera put in there so that the MTO could access those attempting to bypass the scales and direct their limited resources at times efficiently to intercept those vehicles and do safety inspections there. And I know sitting on the Beamsville Truck Bypass Committee, there's a lot of great work that's about to be done with respect to areas on the route where trucks can be inspected right at the side of the road. But I would like to get more inspections done, but unfortunately it's just a logistics thing at this point, trying to get everyone's schedule from about 5 different police services and the MTO, who have a relatively large area to patrol, on board to do that. But our officers are constantly out there looking for it, and we have a phenomenal relationship with the MTO in Vineland. So even if we're not doing a dedicated initiative, our officers, if they stop an unsafe vehicle, they can get on the phone to the MTO at the scales, and they have sent officers out to the side of the road to conduct those inspections. And our service has 1 commercial motor vehicle trained officer, and he's just been transferred or deployed out to Grimsby at the start of this year, and he's working on platoon out here. So 4 days a week, he's out here on patrol doing regular calls for service, but also he's our in-house subject matter expert with regards to commercial motor vehicle enforcement.
That's great, and I really appreciate the detailed response, and I do appreciate your involvement on those committees within Lincoln. Being part of that really sends a strong message. Through you, Madam Mayor, just a follow-up question. Staff Sergeant Perrant, Councillor Patcherive and I are ward councillors in Ward 2, where we've experienced a tremendous amount of growth, a tremendous amount of development over the last few years, probably arguably 1,000+ new homes. With that brings new people to the community. It's really encouraging to see some of your statistics that you showed in your presentation. What would you say to the community that's listening today when we go to a ward meeting and we hear that because of new people coming to the community, crime is on the increase?
I don't necessarily agree with that at all, and I don't think it has anything to do with new people coming to the community. I think that's just a poor excuse. I don't think crime's on the rise at all. I know Mike and I, Kirkopoulos and I, had talked about that when an issue was brought up. As the stats have shown, crime is not on the increase, and I don't think it's acceptable to be blaming new residents to our region for the rise in crime rates. There's no stats whatsoever to prove that.
Thank you, Staff Sergeant, and I really appreciate that comment because I think we need to punctuate that in our community. We believe that at the council level, we believe that at the administration level, and it's great to hear it from NRPS and District 8. Madam Mayor, I just wanted to thank again, you know, the relationship that we've got is incredible. There's really probably not a 48-hour window when we hear something from one of our residents and then within 48 hours, it's on your Twitter account and you're out there looking at a four-way stop where somebody's blowing through it, or up on Aberdeen when we're looking at speeding, or up on Stadelbauer. So we do appreciate the enforcement and we do appreciate all your efforts. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Nicolai.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, through you to our police representatives. Thank you for coming. It's appreciate you taking the time to discuss with us these issues. Myself personally, I try to behave myself, and I've been lucky in the fact that I've not required police services very often. So thank you very much. Regional Councillor Foster was, he's been terrific at attending our meetings monthly. And a question I asked him at the last meeting, which I was hoping he would bring up, but seeing as you're here tonight, was with regards to the possibility or the thought of decoy police cars. And the reason why I asked this is we're in Lincoln, and we're a growing municipality that is connected to other municipalities with many rural roads that connect these growing areas. And what we're seeing is, what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing is that there's a lot of speeding occurring. In the past, I've noticed once in a while there has been a decoy police car in the Jordan area, and residents spoke up and said how they noticed a sizable difference in the amount of in the reduction of speeding through that area. The question I have, is there any thought as to perhaps increasing this, or is this continuing? Is there a possibility of doing this?
I'm not sure if we've done the decoy police car thing, and then that would be for several reasons. From our perspective, it's a liability issue. If someone needed the police in a hurry and they see a police cruiser on the side of the road thinking there's going to be an officer in it that can help them, we wouldn't want them running up to that car thinking there's going to be a police officer in the vicinity of that vehicle and not be there to provide any kind of assistance. I do understand the fact that 8th District patrols a vast amount of rural roads. Every single vehicle in our fleet here in 8th District in particular has moving radar on the dash. So if an officer is going to a call per se, like a non-priority call, and a vehicle's coming at them, that cruiser has a radar on the dash that can pick up the speed of the vehicle approaching them. And quite often the officer, if the speed's excessive, can pull a U-turn and go after that vehicle and stop the driver and speak to them about speeding and or give a citation. So the decoy car really isn't an option for us at this point. We do have other avenues to go about to deal with high flyers or speeders on rural roads.
I appreciate that response. It's, I was doing some research on this, and I did research that the King City or King Township has this program in place, as well as Halton was experimenting with it a few years ago. And both residents and the police forces at the time were noticing reductions in speeding, and along with proper stops at stop signs, vehicles not accelerating to the point where they're producing noise unnecessarily.
Right.
Especially myself, and I'm sure anybody here would agree that if you do see a car that appears to be a police car on the side of the road, you tend to slow down. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor. Councillor Ryman. Thank you very much, Councillor Nicolai. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Easton. Thank you, Chief McCullough and the rest of your staff for attending tonight. Appreciate you taking the time to meet with us. A comment if I may, Mayor Easton, through you to Staff Sergeant Perron. Echoes something of what Councillor Bernay had mentioned as well too. It's been my observation that your staff, yourself and your staff are very attentive and responsive to residents' concerns. As you mentioned, you work through the CAO and he gets our councillor emails as it follows the bouncing ball. And so very attentive and responsive. I've noticed received feedback, from several residents too, that they speak positively of the interaction with your officers. My day job, my work takes me on many of West Niagara and Lincoln roads, and being privy to the trouble spots, I've noticed your cruisers are highly visible, sometimes less than 24 hours later in the areas of concern, the streets, the intersections, the parks, wherever it is. So just wanted to mention that, and a special thanks to you, Staff Sergeant, and the officers for the work you do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I'm going to go to Councillor Timmers and then to Regional Councillor Foster. Go ahead, Councillor Timmers.
Thank you, Mary Steve. And thank you very much to everyone that's on the call here tonight for the Niagara Regional Police Services. Very much appreciate you coming out tonight. And I particularly like to see those stats, especially page 8 with the stats on Lincoln around crime. And I found that quite interesting that the rates have actually decreased. So just further to one of the other councillors' comments around the impression that crime is out of control in Lincoln due to our social media active participants, they tend to post everything on there that's not really accurate. My question is around, I'm in the rural areas and we see a lot of speeding up in the rural roads, a lot of, the running of four-way stops. People just don't stop at all at four-ways. But the one big concern I have is when the exotic cars, the driving groups that come into our community, it's been winter, so it's been fairly quiet. But when the weather is good, we've got these groups that are coming in, especially up here. We see them a lot in the rural roads. They'll have a man stand out and just usher everyone right through stop signs. And they're traveling at high rates of speed. So just if you could comment on how do we deal with that in our community?
Thanks for your question. Yeah, we are aware of that. Our officers do pay attention to that, especially the officers working out in the rural areas in the warmer months. They know that's coming and they do look for that. We've had some challenges with them having lookouts and directing the vehicles, as you've indicated, and we try to respond to those as best we can. We followed up with some of the local agencies and or businesses that rent these vehicles or conduct these tours, and tried to address it in that respect. But we are aware of it, and we are trying to deal with it as best we can in terms of maintaining a presence in the area. And we've had officers, if you've checked our Twitter account going back last summer before, we've stopped these very vehicles and issued citations for these offenses. We can't unfortunately catch them all, but we do make a concerted effort too.
Well, that's great. Thank you. I just really wanted to highlight that while I had the opportunity tonight. So thank you very much.
For sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll go to Deputy Mayor Councillor Paul McPherson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you to Staff Sergeant Perron. So just quickly, you spoke about officers per 100,000 or per 1,000 for all these various communities, and I guess I want to go down that road a little bit more to ask what triggers an addition to your staff when we look at the growth that is forecasted for I would say West Niagara, when you take Grimsby, Lincoln, and West Lincoln into consideration, and the growth, and add to that the geography that you so nicely pointed out, that it represents a significant geography to cover in all of Niagara. So I'm just wondering, what do you look at, or what does the police force look at when considering a need as a result of growing communities?
Well, thanks for your question. I understand that it is a relatively large area and it's 33% of the region. But we also look at the number of calls for service we attend and the distances and the time it takes to get to these areas. There's certain thresholds we have to meet as a police service right across the province in terms of how fast, I guess you could say, we get to a certain level of call. And we're well within that threshold to reach those calls. And the calls for service hasn't at this point dictated a need to increase staffing out here in 8th District. I'm totally appreciative of the fact everyone wants to see a police officer more often, and where I live as well would be nice. But we often have to go by the number of calls for service that we deal with in a particular area. But with that said, I'll defer to the chief for some further comments.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Chief McCullough.
Thanks very much, and appreciate the question. We've undertaken a detailed workload study that we continue to rely upon. We recognize that the ability to have frontline officers respond to calls is one aspect, and we build in a factor. Ideally, we'd like to see about a 40% ratio of being able to be proactive, responding about 60% of the time reactively to calls for service, and then still have that time to proactively address concerns. So we have a very, like I mentioned, a comprehensive workload study that we've done. We have data from multiple years that we're able to plug in, and we're able to really look at the calls for service. We know that really Lincoln is not unique. There are many municipalities across the region that are experiencing significant growth, and we look to apply that same workload study using that same formula that we have to be able to objectively add additional resources as calls for service allow for.
So thank you to both of you gentlemen for that. It's good to hear that there is a proactive piece to that. I was a little bit concerned that it was for the most part reactive, and it was based on the number of calls you're getting. So it's good to hear there is a fairly significant piece of that is proactive. And I wonder maybe through to the CAO if there's not some information that is given to the police force with regards to population growth on an annual basis. Are we providing information as to our growth in number of homes built, in number of people that are coming to our community? Since it's been so significant over the last 3, maybe 4 years, we've seen a significant jump in the number of people that now reside in Lincoln.
Mr. CAO.
So through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, there isn't I think a structured methodology or approach that we're using to share that information. A lot of it happens a little bit more organically, councillor, but I think it's a good point. I think it's something that we can start to do similar to what we're doing with the school board in terms of sharing that information on a yearly basis. So definitely something I can also bring up with some of my colleagues around the region. And if there's a way that we can, I think, put into place a defined approach or a defined methodology, then we'll look to do that.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. And just, Madam Mayor, thank you to all of the police force that is on the call tonight for keeping us safe. Great job. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. And now I'll turn to Regional Councillor Rob Foster.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Easton. And first of all, I want to thank the police services for coming in this evening. Staff Sergeant Perrant, Chief McCullough, and all the rest that are here, and also Member Lawson. Thank you for coming this evening. It's good seeing the board showing the flag as well within these types of meetings. So back, this is probably more towards the chief. And by the way, this is a really good environment for Chief McCullough, because usually he's in front of us at Regional Council, and we're grilling him on something or another, particularly as we're going through budget season. But we added 40 staff back a couple of years ago as part of our budget process, and I know it took a while to bring them all on board. Have we completed the hirings in that area yet? And has that made a difference from your point of view with the overall forces?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, we have completed the additional 40 hires. We've had a number of retirements during that same time frame, and those are in addition to the 40 officers. So it's the attrition plus 40 new net new. So we've received those now. Actually, I believe the last of that group is still being trained with their coach officers at present. I would say that we have seen a significant impact from those additional resources. The calls for service, although there's, it's been a slight increase in calls for service once Sean was able to provide some parameters around how we've now been tracking those different priority 6 calls. I think what we're seeing though is it's the complexity of the calls that we're facing now. It's really it's very, very challenging for the officers. You've got a complex weave of mental illness, mental health and addictions. You've got poverty, homelessness. All of those things factored to create a really challenging environment. But in short answer to your question, we are seeing the positive results from those additional resources.
Through you, Madam Mayor, thank you for that, Chief McCullough. And of course, Councillor McPherson also brought up the question of distribution of staffing and things like that. In fact, Councillor Russell talked about it at the beginning. And so I know you have that in front of us at Regional Council relatively often as questions on that as well. I would say, in a perfect world, I know you'd like to have a lot more police on the ground going on. Can you give this council an idea, kind of the costs that come into play? And the reason is that like we know police services is a fairly substantive part of the regional budget. So, as we go and we look at bringing up new officers, et cetera, there is a fairly substantial cost that goes into play. I mean, just off the top of your head, kind of what we're looking at with those types of things.
Through you, Madam Mayor. You are exactly right. There is a cost associated with policing, and a first-class constable is just over $100,000 a year. So, if we were to add one additional officer to 8 District in order to realize the benefits of that 24/7, we would need to add 4 officers because we work on a 4 platoon schedule. So again, you're adding, and then when you factor in benefits on top of the salary, you're probably coming closer to around $130,000 per officer. So, that adding 1 officer to 8 District is essentially about $500,000. And so, I suspect that we'll hear similar messaging from most of the municipalities as we go around and speak to the various councils. And, everyone would love to see more of us, and we would love to be able to have more officers on the road. But I also recognize that there is a cost impact from every officer that we add to our duty rosters.
And through you, Madam Mayor, just one last question, you know, we talk well, basically at this council here, but also at Niagara Region a lot about the incredibly poor driving habits people have developed over the last few years. And I know it's a big problem for you guys. I do know, Sean, whenever you've been got a hold of, you get out there and you investigate things and make sure that you know, we know and understand what's really going on with the traffic in those areas. But just a quick question for you on the overall at the region. I mean, this is not unique to Lincoln. Some of the issues in and around driving and traffic and these types of things. So I just, or at least from what we've seen on the public works side of things, is that what you guys are seeing on the police side?
I think the same issues are prevalent throughout the region, like you indicated. I mean, I live in Niagara Falls, and there's issues with speeding, and officers in Niagara Falls are doing their best to address those issues as well. So it's not specific to Lincoln, you're correct.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Mr. Kirkopoulos, can I assume that you want to make some comments at the end, or do you have something you want to add now?
No, through you, Madam Mayor, or to you, Madam Mayor, at the end is fine. Thank you.
Councillor Majima, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you also to all of you for coming and presenting. It's very important for the community to be able to hear that you're present and that you're communicating with our staff on a regular basis. So thank you very much for that. My question is about the slide in your presentation on mental health calls for service. So I'm wondering if you can explain a little. It's you have the calls broken out into Mental Health Act violent, and Mental Health Act not violent. So there's 33 Mental Health Act, the blue bar. I'm wondering if you can differentiate between that and the other two bars, which are Mental Health Act violent and Mental Health not violent. And I'm asking also, through COVID, we heard that domestic violence was on the rise. And we heard that from a number of service providers in the community that a group of us had been communicating with on a regular basis. We were talking about vulnerable citizens in the community during COVID. And you said a little bit earlier on that a lot of the calls that you're getting now are complex. So some of the, in some instances, calls are down, but they're becoming more complex. So my question is, what does that blue bar represent, the Mental Health Act calls in particular? How do they differentiate from violent and non-violent calls? And also, what kind of services do you have to assist you with those more complex calls that you're seeing on a regular basis? And do you have plans to increase those kind of support services in the future?
Thank you very much.
Sure. Thanks for your question. So the Mental Health Act calls is the overall number of calls in 2021 in Lincoln, and then it's just a breakdown of how we finally break down the actual nature of the call itself, if it involved violence or if it was a non-violent call where someone was seeking assistance and our officers were able to provide it either through their CIT training or through their contacts with our MCERT program. So it's just for us to understand the breakdown of the calls and what our officers are out there actually experiencing on the street. And sorry, your other question with respect to the time-consuming nature of the calls, for instance, let's go back to the example of the armed robbery and the officers make an arrest in that robbery, and the suspect has a cell phone on them, and they have reason to believe there's going to be evidence on that cell phone to corroborate or substantiate their charges or solidify their charges. You'd then be looking at writing a search warrant on that phone and possibly production orders, which are judicial authorizations. So a simple call that can be perceived as being simple can often be complex because there's so much we deal with in this day and age. Everyone on them has a cell phone on them. There's cameras everywhere. So the officers might be writing a search warrant or several search warrants for a simple armed robbery call. So that speaks to the nature of the complexity of the calls our officers are now dealing with. And with respect to that, they have, like I indicated, other units that can assist them. We have a domestic violence unit, which is detectives that are assigned on a 4-platoon system, like our frontline officers. So if an officer in Grimsby or Grimsby Lincoln goes to a domestic violence call tonight and makes an arrest, they would hand off that arrest to a detective within our domestic violence unit, who then assumes carriage of the matter and does up the proper charges and the reports, and then follows it through the entire court process. And that's no different than the other units we have available to assist, like our technological crimes unit, our ICE unit, our child abuse unit. So our officers, you see the frontline officer on the road, but behind that officer is that entire slide or two of resources and units that are available at their disposal to assist them in their duties.
Okay, thank you. And do you see a need for increasing those particular resources that you have, particularly related to, I guess, domestic violence and mental health?
Me personally, I do not. I know we're well staffed in those areas.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Petrarita.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Through you to Staff Sergeant Perron. Thank you so much for being here and everyone from the police services. And I just wanted to highlight the great relationship that you have with Director Graham and Mr. Karkopoulos. We had a ward meeting and a bunch of speeding issues came up, or, you know, rolling through stop signs, and your officers were dispatched there the next day and then follow up with your Twitter. So we were able to take that and then post it on our Facebook to say, hey, you know, they've reacted so quickly. My question to that is, do you release the number of violations that you would write? Like, so, you know, if residents say an intersection is problematic and you're there, is that something that you highlight or can highlight?
There is a possibility of being able to do that. I've done it in past council meetings, but I could make that available.
Okay, terrific. And Chief McCullough, we've got a really good one out here, so please don't move him. Leave him for a bit. He's doing a fantastic job.
Thank you. Appreciate the feedback.
Councillor Mikulik.
Thank you, thank you, Mary Easton. I appreciate the opportunity to ask another question. It comes from, there's a board member here as well, and comes from a conversation that I had a couple of years ago with regards to policing and trying to reduce cost with policing. And I take, for example, that there was some talk about the possibility of not necessarily requiring these first-class constable types to supervise craft shows, work at traffic, road closures, you know, and hire, like, things that are more of a security nature. Has there been any further discussions on that in terms of staffing and perhaps not requiring a fully licensed or fully equipped officer for certain situations that may not require it?
Well, a lot of the situations you've referenced are the individual organizers of those events wanting to have a police officer there. The police officers in some capacities, that whether it be a craft show, I know the one you may be referring to, they're required to direct traffic. So police officers are the ones that are able to direct traffic and stop vehicles on the roadway. But in terms, those are what's called special duties or paid duties, and those are arranged between the private entity and the police service. It's not the taxpayers that is paying the cost of those.
Appreciate that response. Is that a requirement of these organizers to have police presence?
We have a general order or operating procedures we go by, but it's dictated by the type of event that is being held or wanting to be held, and then we'll meet with those organizers and determine the appropriate police response if there is going to be one at all. So there's a couple of factors that go into formulating whether or not we're going to be attending an event like that or required to.
I appreciate your response. I'm just asking that from a financial perspective in terms of needs and what can be done as an alternative.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Deputy Mayor, I have a couple of questions, if you wouldn't mind taking the chair.
Go ahead, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. I think Chief McCullough, it's best if I refer my comments to you for the moment. I'm laughing at Councillor Petrarita's jumping in and telling you not to pull the trigger too fast on moving our commander away but we always have this conversation with you, and there's something about the police officers that work in this area that I very much appreciate. There's such a consistency in terms of their understanding of who we are as communities, and we see that in the programs. There's just no question about it. I would say that in the time that I've been mayor, that there's an improved and increased impression that the scope of services is greater than it was before. I truly don't believe that you've been able to, have that miracle occur. That's the impression that people have. And that it also appears as if there's more vehicles on the road. And I doubt that you've had that miracle come your way either. But there's something about the way work is being done that's responding to the needs of the community. And that's how they really show up to us. So, so thank you. And that's a comment that is often made. Staff Sergeant Perrant, I want to say to you that our access to you and your response to us and the kind of support that you have given us in so many different ways around road safety, around bylaws, around the most, minimalistic kinds of things. You've been that way from the beginning, and you caught on very quickly. I don't know what it takes to prepare the commander for the district, but it's sort of like when the CAO came. Mike had a playbook that he uses and to introduce himself to the community. So I want to thank you very much for that, because we don't often have a long period of time with our staff sergeants. And so when you quickly catch on and jump right in, it makes a really huge difference. I feel that you are very much on top of the needs of this community, and that growth in the community is not going to be a risk because things are under control now. And I just want to make sure that your superiors hear that you are a valuable asset to this community. I had forgotten that you actually took part in the advisory committee, the active transportation. And I think that that also sends the public a very, very strong message. So thank you very much for taking that time away from your family life to participate in that. Knowing and understanding is really very much a part of what your role is all about. I just want to respond, Chief McCullough, to this idea about officers being available for special duties. And I realize that this is probably just my personal opinion because I don't hear other people expressing it, and I don't know how else it can be dealt with, but I have a great concern, as I know that you do, that the well-being of officers is really important. I think rest and getting away from the job is another important part of that. And so I just wanted to share with you that I consider that a major priority when you consider the complexities of what they're having to deal with every day. I know a few years ago, Chief, that you and I were part of the Niagara's, I think it was called the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. And that came out as as a response to the province's Safe Ontario Act of 2018. And the question that I have is whether or not some of these initiatives that you talked about tonight, particularly the, what did you call that, Special Code 6, sorry. Is that could be one of the initiatives, but where would you put emphasis, just for my benefit, and for Councillor Foster's benefit, in terms of seeing how that community safety and well-being plan is playing out in Niagara?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the community safety and well-being plan obviously is multifaceted. Obviously, addressing mental health and having an enhanced service that we provide to the community is one that we're working towards. We are continuing to have discussions with EMS. We enjoy a tremendous partnership with Canadian Mental Health Association, where we have mental health workers who work alongside of our officers in the car. In one district in St. Catharines and Thorold, and in 2 districts in the communities of Niagara Lake and Niagara Falls. We look to also to enhance that in the future in Welland and Pelham. Now, that said, those officers who are working in Grimsby and Beamsville, Lincoln, West Lincoln, have the ability to connect with our mental health worker who is working on the road, to run a particular scenario by them to get some input from that. So certainly that is one area where I think we all agree that if we can have a better coordinated response in dealing with those challenging calls, I think we would better serve the community. So that is one of many areas of the community safety and wellbeing plan. I think that where we've been most impacted, because we end up being the call of first response and we end up being the call of last response, because for the most part we're the one of the only agencies that operates 24/7.
Great. Okay. And how would you describe the value of a fulsome program for housing as part of the community safety and wellbeing plan?
Well, again, not so much from a policing perspective, but unfortunately, again, as I mentioned, it's the complexity of dealing with homelessness, poverty, mental health, and addictions that all combine to create this really wicked problem. And, I think if affordable housing and homelessness, they all go hand in hand. And I think, I know the region is working to address issues of homelessness as best as possible. Again, we have a great partnership with our partners at the region, and I know that they're working diligently to try and address the homeless issue and to be able to provide that affordable housing. We know that part of the issue is there's tremendous growth in building that's happening all across the region. Those homes tend to be the $1 million plus homes that are going on, and that's not necessarily the target audience for the people who are in need of housing.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful. And that's a document that we'll be looking for more items in. Mr. Chairman, Councillor or Deputy Mayor McPherson, I want to ask the Chief whether or not there's any benefit to the commercial vehicle team if the town of Lincoln and possibly others consider purchasing portable scales so that more stops can be made. Is there any benefit to us considering that in our 2022 budget?
That's kind of out of my bailiwick, I'll be honest with you. I think it would be something that your council and through the CAO would have to take really a business case approach and understand. I don't know, I have no idea what the cost of portable scales are, and whether or not there would be a return on investment from that purchase, and whether or not we would be able to assist with the town of Lincoln to address. I know it's been an ongoing issue for quite some time, but I'm going to drive within my lane, and that's outside of my area of expertise.
Okay, well, I don't see anybody else jumping up, but it's probably, oh yes, my staff sergeant, go ahead.
I know that has been mentioned and we've talked. I can't remember if I talked to David or to Mike about it, but we've talked about it, and we have such a great relationship with the MTO here in Vineland in particular. If an officer were to stop a vehicle that required weighing or having their vehicle weighed, they could either escort the vehicle to the weigh station in Vineland, or the MTO has been gracious enough. They have portable scales, and we have such a good relationship with them. I can get a hold of Nick Karakis there 24/7, and he can have an officer come out to the scene if we couldn't get the vehicle to the weigh scales itself. That he would have an officer come out and weigh the truck there if it was an issue. So you're lucky, I guess, in terms of the location of your town to the great access we have to the MTO commercial motor vehicle crew, that they just have it there. And I don't know if it'd be beneficial to you to go about obtaining one specifically for the town itself when you have those resources right in the town, essentially.
That's great. Thank you very much. And that is a change. So I'll consider that as a major improvement. Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And I'll turn now to Mr. Prokopoulos to have the final word. Thanks very much, Mark.
So thanks, and through you, Madam Mayor, and at the risk of, I think, maybe repeating a few of the comments made, my sincere thanks to the partnership with Niagara Regional Police, and specifically Chief McCullough, Deputy Flynn, Inspector McCauley, Superintendent Giannico, obviously Sean. I think I talked to Sean, maybe not as much as Dave Graham, but I talk to Sean on a pretty regular basis, and he's been as available as I think any police lead that I've ever worked with in the past 2.5 decades. So thanks to you, Sean. Of course, Stephanie, on all things kind of media and community stuff. And I don't know Board Member Lawson, but thank you for being here tonight. I think everyone's spoken to the partnership, the importance of the support you provide us. I think, in turn, we're very supportive of NRPS and the work you do, the command team, and I think that's a testament to you being here this evening. Your community engagement is phenomenal, and I think that's an important part of what we all do in terms of reacting and being out there with the community. I know Sean's escorted me, not in the official capacity, but come to some neighborhood events with me and to talk to some interesting residents, to say the least. So thank you to that. I think great to hear the comments this evening. And I know Councillor Brunet asked them around the positive trending that we're seeing, for lack of a better word. I think we often hear about data and what does the data show. So showing that crime's down in our community is a positive. So thank you to all of you. I think NRPS continues to be well equipped to keep our community safe, and we'll continue to work closely with Sean and all of you. So thank you.
Thanks very much, CAO. And on behalf of council, I also want to thank Director Graham for his excellent cooperation and interventions as well. It is a good plan that we're working, and it's effective. And it's very good to have you all here tonight and to be able to reinforce this with at the community level. So Member Lawson, I hope you're leaving feeling that this is not just a mutual admiration society out here. We've worked very hard for the last 6 years, 7 years, almost 8 years now on this team. And even though people change from time to time, the attitude is the same, and we're going forward, and it's a great benefit to our community. Thank you all very much. Thank you, councillors, for your questions. Madam Clerk, moving on to the motion. I have a motion moved by Councillor McPherson and seconded by Councillor Riley. The council receive and file for information a presentation from the Niagara Regional Police Service regarding updates on services and programs provided by the police service. Madam Clerk, would you please call out the vote?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Councillor Regima?
Yes.
Councillor Russell?
Yes.
Councillor Brunet?
Yes.
Councillor Pachariva?
Yes.
Councillor McPherson?
Yes.
Councillor Miklik?
Yes.
Councillor Reimer?
Yes.
Councillor Timmers?
Yes.
Mayor Easton? And that carries.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thanks very much for having us. Really appreciate the support.
Thank you very much, Chief McCullough. We move on now to item 11, items for consideration, and we have two items this evening. The first item, 11.1, is item 1.10 of the Council Information Package week ending February 18th, 2022 from the Chair, Niagara Region Irrigation Committee. We follow up Niagara's agricultural sector and access to untreated water for irrigation. And I was looking at this report the other day because we have a major report and decision-making coming up on the 23rd of March, I believe it is. So I thought it was a good idea. Jillian, the Associate Director of Public Works, Jillian Harris, is a member of that committee. She's a really valuable member of the committee, and she's going to present this report to you and is available to answer any questions, because although I'm not aware of any investment that's required at the moment, certainly engineering expertise throughout this process has been extremely valuable. Jillian, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For some background on this information report that was brought forward, the region is leading an irrigation committee in hopes to provide Lincoln, St. Catharines, and Niagara-on-the-Lake farmers and growers with the opportunity to have untreated water for irrigation purposes. It's definitely becoming a more prevalent issue as we see changes within climate change and some of our significant drought periods in between some of our intense storms. So one of the issues that is being, I guess I should say, well, the portion of the committee's focus for Lincoln is going well, and we are moving forward with generating a request for proposal for some of the work on the portion to provide water to the St. Catharines and then the far eastern border of the town of Lincoln. With water, we are running into some issues with access to water, and the hopes to be able to acquire some water off of the reservoirs of the DQ drinking water station. Unfortunately, access or water to this area is controlled off of the Welland Canal from the Ontario Power Generation Corporation, and all water is accounted for within that reserve, either for drinking water purposes, which does provide water to Jordan and Vineland in the town from the DQ water treatment plant, and then a portion that is required to go over the Morningstar Mill and have that portion. So there is not any additional capacity that OPG currently allocates through those gates. So there is a request to try and obtain more. At this point, OPG is not willing to work with the region, the city of St. Catharines, on this feature. So there has been a request to go to the ministries to try and kind of initiate some of those conversations to actually get the people around the table to have the discussions rather than kind of a quick knee-jerk reaction of no. The second is to set up a meeting with the Canada Infrastructure Bank for funding, because unfortunately, well, and as we've all seen with our public works projects and community services, any of our infrastructure projects actually across not only Lincoln, but definitely within the region and spreading it across, is that these projects are unfortunately not inexpensive. So this is a significant endeavor to make across the Lincoln project, but then as well the St. Catharines, and to make some improvements for the Niagara-on-the-Lake. So there's an intent to try and set up meetings with the Canada Infrastructure Bank to look at some possible funding opportunities and how to approach getting the system in place to help our farmers so we can continue to be kind of that center of excellence for agriculture. So I'm not sure if there's anything else that you'd like me to address right now, but I'm happy to answer any questions from council on how this is going as well.
Okay, Jillian, would you just quickly speak about what the next step is, and then we'll go to questions.
Yep, so for there's the three different projects. So the next step for Lincoln is we've identified, we've met with a number of growers to kind of gather some interest. there has been a consultant that has prepared kind of a line on the map, a rough alignment options for some alternatives. So the next step is to identify kind of from a feasibility standpoint, from the financial aspects. We're developing the proposal to go out for a consultant to price out from a high level of what this project would cost to provide untreated water through a piped irrigation system to the town of Lincoln and the growers across that run. And we've looked at a combination of options for providing water for growers below the escarpment, and then as well as options that we can consider above the escarpment as well, to try and to be able to address all areas of agriculture within the town. So that'll be our next step, and then to evaluate the feasibility of that, and then to move forward within the preliminary design and moving through that design process. Once we have that idea of the cost, and if it's doable within an approach parallel to that, we're also looking at right now a kind of how the system will be managed, whether or not it would be grower managed, if it would be a creation of a utility that would be addressing it, since it is across a number of municipalities, and what role the town and the region and the growers would take within that. So that assessment is being done concurrently. So that's the focus on the Lincoln, and then the next steps on the St. Catharines portion, or to address some of, again, at the eastern border properties of town, would be really to get those conversations lined up with Ontario Power Generation to ensure that it is possible to get the additional flows into the DQ Reservoir in order to feed the system. If that's not possible, then unfortunately we'd have to go back to step one in the St. Catharines system to identify some other alternatives for providing untreated drinking water for irrigation.
Okay, thank you very much, Jillian. And keep in mind, councillors, this is really an update. There's been quite a bit of work done, but we're really only at a point now where it was where, you know, I felt that the information was going to be meaningful. So I'll open the floor for questions. That's fine. If there are none, I'll have Jillian bring another update once we've had the meeting on the 23rd, and we see whether or not the progress that's been made at that point. Thank you very much for entertaining this this item. Thank you, Jillian. We'll move on then to item 11.2.
Madam Mayor, we have a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm looking at the agenda. Okay.
It's a motion moved by Councillor McClick, seconded by Councillor Timmers.
Let me just make sure that Director Graham didn't have anything that he wanted to add. I was looking at the wrong paper before. Director Graham, did you have anything to add?
Thanks. No, I don't, Madam Mayor. I thought Jillian did a good overview of where we're at. So thanks for checking.
Oh, that's good. I have a motion then moved by Councillor Mikulik and seconded by Councillor Timmers. The council receiving and file as information the following agenda item of correspondence, item 1.10 of council information package week ending February 18th, 2022 from the chair, Niagara Region Irrigation Committee. We follow up Niagara's agricultural sector and access to untreated water for irrigation. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Thank you. Councillor Rajima?
Yes.
Councillor McPherson?
Yes.
Councillor Russell?
Yes.
Councillor Micklek?
Yes.
Councillor Brunet?
Yes.
Councillor Reimer?
Yes.
Councillor Pachariva?
Yes.
Councillor Timmers?
Yes.
Mayor Easton?
Support.
And that carries.
Okay, thank you very much. We're moving on then to the next item, which is 11.2, and it refers to item 1.13 of council information package week ending February 25th, 2022 Niagara Region, Re-Invitation Regional Council Indigenous Education Training Session. And I'm going to I'm asking CAO Kirkopoulos briefly to mention this, because I don't believe that this is compulsory, but I think there was a great push on to try and get as many local councillors as possible. Mr. CAO.
Through you, Madam Mayor, that is correct. This is a Regional Council Indigenous Education Training Program that is being put on by the region. It is open to all members of local councils. And I think, as we start to develop more partnerships, including a upcoming MOU that we will be signing with our Indigenous partners, I think anytime we can get education, understand the sensitivities, understand a number of the issues and the importance of, becoming friends in that truest sense with our Indigenous partners, so that we can address problems as they arise, so that we can focus on our local communities. We've seen a number of instances where we've worked closely with our Indigenous partners, be it on developments or otherwise. So I encourage all members of council to attend this large region-wide education and training session. However, I do want to also remind council or inform council that there will be a more localized training session that staff from community services are working to set up as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Mackay, do you have anything that you would add to that then? And maybe that's going to make the difference between the choice that councillors make? Do you have a date for that local session?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We're working with the clerk to pick a date, probably later this spring.
Okay, all right. All right, so, all right, councillors, do you have any questions at all? I've been to a couple of these now. They are eye openers. You know that expression, you don't know what you know until you know it? I think this is it. It's really, it's quite revealing. All right, I have a motion by Councillor Russell and seconded by Councillor Reimer that the council members of the town of Lincoln be permitted to attend and participate electronically in the special regional council meeting being held on March 31st, 2022 at 6 p.m. to receive Indigenous education and training in closed session in accordance with subsection 239, 3.1 of the Municipal Act 2001. That the council of the town of Lincoln confirm that this session is for training and education purposes only, and no direction will be issued to staff and no decisions or motions will be made that advance the business or decision-making of the council and the town of Lincoln. That the council of the town of Lincoln waive the rules of procedure to adopt Niagara Region Procedural Bylaw 120-2010 as amended for the purpose and duration of the special regional council meeting being held on March 31st, 2022. That the council of the town of Lincoln authorize the delegation of the duties of the clerk to the regional clerk for the purpose and duration of the special regional council meeting in accordance with subsection 228, subsection 4 of the Municipal Act 2001. That regional chair Jim Bradley be appointed as the presiding officer for the purpose and duration of the special regional council meeting, and that the clerk be directed to provide a copy of this resolution to the regional clerk so that it may be included as part of the minutes of the special regional council meeting. I see Councillor Njima.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So if one person wanted to attend, how would one do so? Do we do so through the clerk?
Madam Clerk?
So there was an email circulated to the councillor through the mayor. There was an email circulated not too long ago to all of council informing you of this upcoming training and that you were to forward me your interest in attending. I have heard from 2 members of council so far. So I would ask this evening that if you are interested to please convey that to me so that I can ensure that the link is forwarded to each member of council and that you have the details in order to attend that session.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, thank you, Madam Clerk, for including all of the details so that we don't have any worries about quorum throughout this or roles. Would you please call the vote?
Thank you. Councillor McPherson,
Yes.
Councillor Russell,
Yes.
Councillor Brunet,
Yes.
Councillor Rajima,
Yes.
Councillor Pachariva,
Yes.
Councillor Miklick,
Yes.
Councillor Timmers,
Yes.
Councillor Reimer,
Yes.
Mayor Easton,
Support.
and that carries.
All right, and next on the agenda is an added item from the council information package week ending February 25th, 2022, from the town of Aurora. Read the request to dissolve Ontario Land Tribunal. And I know that we need a 2/3 vote to proceed with this. Madam Clerk, would you be you planning to have that vote now before we go further?
No, Madam Mayor, we took that earlier in the meeting to add it to
Oh,
the agenda,
yes.
and now it's up for it's on this agenda now.
Yes, I'm sorry, I do recall that. All right then, Councillor Miklick, this is your item. You lifted this item to speak to it. Please go ahead. And do you have any comments at the moment? Otherwise, we can go on to have our Director of Special Projects comment as well. So I'll go to you first, Councillor.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I want to thank my fellow members of council for the opportunity to bring this item. It came to my mind when we received the council correspondence on Friday afternoon, so I was a little late on putting this on tonight's agenda. I'm not sure when exactly. It slipped my mind as far as when we're supposed to notify the clerk in terms of when to add these sort of things. So I just want to start out by saying that I don't know what happened in Aurora or any of these other municipalities, for that matter, that have brought forward these sorts of requests to eliminate the OLT. I can only comment to what I'm seeing here within Lincoln, and that is, as per the mayor at a committee of the whole meeting on February 7th, that we as a council and staff are working with an elephant in the room. Is this an ideal way to produce planning reports that are being brought before council to review? So municipalities, like in my mind, take great pride in their official plans because they were produced by local residents along with council and members of staff for the local residents, both current and future. I mean, who knows the best? Who knows what's best for those living and planning within that community as far as what's best for that future goes? And then another point like that really brought this to my attention was like at that same February 7th committee of the whole meeting, our CAO stated with regards to a recent development that we were reviewing on that evening. And his quote is, "I know it's easy to just say no and let another body approve it, but that's not what's best for the community. It's not what we get in terms of the end result. The project will be worse if an office in Toronto makes this decision for us." So I'm hoping that, that we have a conversation, discuss this, and members of council bring forward their thoughts on this. And then do we want to support this motion that Aurora has placed, before other municipalities with the hopes of supporting? Or can we come up with a better solution? This time, I'm not, I'm open to a debate and a discussion for those interested. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Okay, Mr. or Councillor Miklick, was there something particular that you had in mind?
Well, depending on the mood of the room, we can bring forward a motion to support this motion or just file it for correspondence.
Thank you very much. All right, Madam Clerk, I'll open the floor then for any questions or comments by members of council?
There is Councillor Timmers, and we have Deputy Mayor Councillor McPherson.
Very good. Thank you. Councillor Timmers, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. I too found this very interesting, this motion. I feel that we need some kind of a body. There has to be some kind of a process where people can appeal. But however, I feel that every application, it's like, well, if it goes to the OLT, it's going to pass because it's meeting all the planning policies and the official plan and the province, and our hands feel somewhat tied. So I feel pretty supportive of where this is going. However, I feel we need something, some form of a board of some type. I just can't see that we would have nothing. However, I was reading in there that Ontario is the only province in all of Canada that has an OLT or some form of an OLT. So I would definitely, we should take a good look at this and see if there is something, some kind of a different type of body that we could support. But those are my comments for now, Maryston. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Deputy Mayor, Councillor Paul McPherson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And you know, I would agree with Councillor Timmers in that, you know, we as a local council are responsible for the development in our town, and we are also responsible for taking the targets that we are given and working to those targets. And you know, I think we take that responsibility very, very seriously. I think our staff takes that responsibility very seriously. And I think that this sort of overseer approach to decisions that are made at the municipal level takes a lot of our responsibility away. And I think that, you know, the pendulum is swung certainly, in my opinion, in the favor of developers, and that there is that gray cloud that hangs over both the council and the staff when making a decision on development that, you know, well, we'll just waltz off to the OLT and get what we want. So I don't see it as a productive tribunal, if you will, that adds to the credibility of both municipal staff and municipal council as it sits today. I would venture to say that the overseeing should be done when looking at, are you hitting your targets? And not a group of folks that look at it from a very, very strict planning lens. So I would absolutely support this motion to, and I don't know where it will go, but to send a message along with the other municipalities back to the provincial government to say, we need something better. We need something that leaves the decision-making within the municipality. And if the municipality is not following the direction for their targets, the province can step in and make what they see as necessary changes to that system. So I applaud the councillor for bringing it forward, and I will support it.
Okay, thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. And Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, I would agree with both Councillor McPherson, or Deputy Mayor McPherson, and Councillor Timmers in my support of this. And I'm just wondering, and this would be a question to our CAO, or maybe even Director Dale. I agree with Councillor Timmers' notion that we do need to have some form of appeal process in place. I think, I don't know if it would behoove us to actually suggest what that might be. To me, I think maybe one of the best case scenarios would be a regional based committee of elected officials that would sit on a committee of some sort and rule and mediate on behalf of local area municipalities. But I don't know if we go as far as suggest that in our support of this, or do we just strictly go forward with the support if it falls that way? So to our CAO or to Director Dale, just wondering your thoughts if we should include a suggestion of knowing the importance of an appeal process and maybe what that appeal process may be that may be more self-serving towards the local area municipalities.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Mr. Papadopoulos.
Through you, Madam Mayor, why don't I start, and then Kathleen may be able to offer some more specific planning opinions and thoughts. I do think, Councillor, if Council is going to support this particular motion, simply saying let's abolish the OLT and not provide an alternative so that there is an appeal mechanism, because I think that appeal mechanism is not just an appeal mechanism for a particular property owner or developer, but also for residents. And we've seen it work. A number of councils will remember last term, and Councillor Mikulik and I were actually chatting about this earlier when he asked me for some examples. Shire, we supported residents, and together with residents and the community, we fought the what some would say is the big bad industry looking to come into our community. So an appeal process is absolutely paramount for us to have. So I would say if council really does want to go in the direction of supporting this particular motion, then I think you could add something into the motion like that, craft our own particular motion, or make some other suggestions. So that can happen a number of ways. Work with the current motion in front of you, or we can come back to a future meeting with a slightly different, slightly reworded motion that I think speaks to making sure that whatever process is in place does have an appeal mechanism.
Councillor Russell, how does that sound to you?
No, that sounds good. I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Mr. CAO.
Okay, that's very good. Councillor Longino.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I know in the past, I'm sure Councillor Pachariva and Councillor Foster will probably remember this. I remember looking at this a number of years ago when a report came to us, but circumstances change, and it's always worth having another look at and seeing what we think is appropriate. I know Aurora has led the charge on appeal reviews or for a number of years now. So I agree that I think this is a difficult subject to just look at as a one-off without some more information. We do need an appeal body of some kind. So I appreciate the CAO's suggestion to come back with some sort of an alternate motion that we could support that maybe had a little more detail rather than just the idea that it be abolished altogether. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to turn now to Ms. Dale. Kathleen, this is an area you've had a lot of experience with. What can you add? And also to the suggestion that has been put on the floor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I do agree with our CIO in that you do need some sort of appeal body because the reasoning for that is it's for the residents if they don't agree with the council decision, or if an applicant doesn't agree with the council decision, there is always a possibility of having an appeal mechanism and having some oversight to the decisions. Unfortunately, there are some councils out there. They just don't want to make decisions. And so then it forces, the matters to go to the land tribunal. So that's not a good thing. The other thing too is when you do get a lot of appeals, it does take a lot of staff time and council time to try and resolve those appeals. There's also a lot of legal costs involved. I think, yeah, I would agree. There has to be some sort of, there needs to be some sort of mediated solution or something to deal with these appeals. I guess really when we look at, I think a lot of these issues are coming out of sort of the form of development that's happening, with a lot more redevelopment and intensification. So you tend to get a lot of people that don't necessarily agree with that, even though you may have policies in a place that contemplates that in certain locations. The other thing to keep in mind too is with there really is also the need, maybe I'm getting a bit off topic, but there's also a need to address more of a variety of housing. And that's why we're seeing more of these forms of development, which is generally what people don't like. People are used to, this sort of what's similar in their neighborhood. But generally speaking, yeah, I think if you're going to oppose it, you probably should provide some backup as to an alternative solution.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you very much. I'm looking for other hands. Councillor Reimer.
Thank you, Mary Easton. My comments. I believe part of this issue is tied to the supply of affordable, attainable housing, and also the variety of housing types, as Director Kathleen just mentioned. I would agree that there are some setbacks and wrinkles in the current model, definitely. But in speaking with several local developers, the removal of the LPAT board would definitely result in a slowdown or restriction of housing starts. And we can look at that through different lenses and debate that, but that would be a definite. To have no board there would result in housing starts slowing down. That means a less supply, which drives up demand, which drives up the costs. So we would, if one of our goals here is to afford to have affordable housing, this I believe would actually be doing the reverse. It would be lessening housing supply and the variety of that, and driving those prices back up. We do need some type of committee or some type of body for appeal, but I would not support this motion as it's written. Thank you, Mary.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay. Deputy Mayor, I'll make a few comments on this so that people know where I stand, that councillors know where I stand, if you don't mind.
Go ahead, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. There's a couple of things. I certainly agree that we need an alternative. I can't remember how many times the OMB was asked, the province was asked to get rid of the OMB. And I really thought that the significant change that they made to keep the Ontario Land Tribunal examinations very, very focused, whereas the OMB was a much, much broader process and went on for a long time and was also very, very expensive. But, I can see why in some areas that's not working. And maybe it's because in some of these municipalities, they have lost, and they may have lost very significantly in terms of how they view their community going forward. So I always go back to the regulations, and I look at the kind of things that I think that most of you look at, but I'm not sure that the motivation is always there for all members of the community to look at. And there's several, I guess about 6 areas under growth planning that we look at when we're looking at applications, and they include things like infrastructure planning and investment, particularly the whole subject of being able to identify what our needs are going to be, getting our fair share of money that's available from all 3 levels, and not asking for too much. Don't ask for too much too early, and certainly you don't want to be behind the 8 ball. Demographic changes are also an important part of growth, and I am concerned about expanding our boundaries so that we lose agricultural land. And I was actually reviewing a number of documents today about that. It's even being suggested that possibly the numbers that the province is giving us are higher than we need. And so that's something else that's coming up from a number of different sectors. Certainly employment trends are extremely important. That's the basis of our economic development plan. And our overall land use planning, and certainly population health, the support that we have provided for those who are going to be living in this community, whether it's support of West Lincoln Hospital, new family doctors, the Niagara South Hospital, walk-in clinics. We've been part and parcel of all of these discussions, and they are all part of planning for a community. But I also want to draw your attention, I know that Mr. Bruder has mentioned this on a number of occasions, when he talks about the role of the province, he speaks to the minimum intensification targets. And that's why when you look at a property, as we did on Ontario Street and Green Lane, we really should be using land to the fullest extent that we can, not to the extent of it being overwhelming, but we should be, if we can go put more units in and make those units available, we certainly should do that. And so those minimum intensification targets are available not only overall, but within the Greenbelt area and also in the urban growth areas, which we're mostly talking about. So if there is going to be support for this motion, I also don't want to see it as lip service, writing the same thing that everybody else has written. I think we're better than that. And also, if we could come up with one, possibly two recommendations on how it might be best carried out in this region or particularly in this community, I would be willing to support that going forward. Thank you very much. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
You're welcome, and back over to you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Some of you haven't spoken. This is a pretty important matter. I just want to give everybody a chance. Okay, just let me find my guide here.
Madam Mayor, may I suggest an amendment to that motion at the end, that it just says that in that council bring back a motion to the next scheduled council meeting, and since Councillor Miklick had lifted it, we could have him be the mover of the notice of motion. So we'll work with council to draft something that conveys the concerns that we've all heard tonight.
Okay, all right. Just let me check with Councillor Russell. Was that your intentions, Councillor? Get your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to clarify what the next step was, so that's perfect. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
All right, Councillor Miklick, you're prepared, obviously, to move that motion.
I would. I just, going into this discussion, and as of this morning, I really was, made to feel like I was really felt that, there is an appeal process for the general public, the little guy, the resident, and that is at the next election, because I personally can't think of too many times, and maybe I'm wrong, how many times the little guy wins at an LPAT or OLT hearing. Usually it's the municipality in the least, and certainly the OLT would, side with the municipality. And for the most part, if it falls within that planning document, that official plan, that should mean something. It shouldn't just, we shouldn't be making decisions just with the threat of being overruled. And that's the problem that I have. And I want to make sure that the OLT isn't there for developers to just use at their discretion. And, it should represent those that are perhaps possibly negatively impacted or disrespected in the process. So I appreciated this conversation, and I'd be happy to look at, formulating a made for Lincoln solution, which is what we're known for. So I appreciate that.
Okay, is there any other staff comments on to bring clarification to anything that has been said? CEO Kirkopoulos, if you will.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think just in an effort to so that staff are clear, I think we'll work with Councillor Mick and maybe Councillor Russell, I think, as the mover and the member of council that brought up the need for an appeal, and maybe look for some different wording, maybe take parts of the current motion, and I think collectively with Ms. Dale, Mr. Deanny, and a few of us, we can put our heads around maybe a motion that we feel council may support, or at least put it in front of you for consideration. Just wanted to confirm that's indeed the direction we're going in.
Okay, is everyone in agreement with that? Okay, I don't believe there's any deadlines related to any of this. Thank you, Madam. Okay. All right, Madam Clerk, would you please just read that motion?
I certainly will. So it's moved by Councillor Mick, seconded by Councillor Timmers, that council receive and files information the following agenda item of correspondence, item 1.3 of council information package, week ending February 25th, 2022, regarding a request to dissolve Ontario Land Tribunal OLT, and that council bring back a motion to the next scheduled council meeting. I can just call the vote, Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Councillor Regina.
Yes.
Councillor and Deputy Mayor McPherson.
Yes.
Councillor Reimer.
Yes.
Councillor Brunet.
Yes.
Councillor Russell.
Yes.
Councillor Mick.
Yes.
Councillor Timmers.
Yes.
Councillor Pachariva.
Yes.
And Mayor Easton. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Madam. I just need to get a glass of water. I'll be right back.
Madam Mayor, if you could unmute. There you go.
All right, thank you. Thanks very much, councillors. We're at item number 12, and we're considering the special council minutes of February 14th, 2022. Do members have any questions?
Seeing none.
All right, I have a motion moved by Councillor Pachariva, seconded by Councillor Brunet. The council approved the minutes of the following meetings of council, special council minutes of February 14th, 2022. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Councillor Timmers.
Yes.
Councillor Pachariva.
Yes.
Councillor Reimer.
Yes.
Councillor Brunet.
Yes.
Councillor Mick.
Yes.
Councillor Russell.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Councillor McPherson.
Yes.
Councillor Regina.
Yes.
Madam Mayor. That carries.
And item number 13, recommendations from standing committees. Item number 13.1, Committee of the Whole minutes of February 28th, 2022. Do members have any questions?
Seeing none.
I have a motion moved by Councillor McPherson, seconded by Councillor Regina. The council approved the following recommendations from standing committee. Committee of the Whole minutes of February 28th, 2022. Madam Clerk, if you would please call the vote.
Councillor Russell. Councillor Brunet.
Yes.
Councillor McPherson.
Yes.
Councillor Mick.
Yes.
Councillor Pachariva.
Yes.
Councillor Regina.
Yes.
Councillor Timmers.
Yes.
Councillor Reimer.
Yes.
Madam Mayor. And that carries.
And we move on to notice of motion, and I understand, Madam Clerk, that we have none.
We have none.
And under 15, we have reported municipal officers, and item 15.1 is the mayor's report. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining this evening and or observing the proceedings on our YouTube channel. I have a few things that I'd like to review with you tonight, including some of the activities that have happened since February the 15th, which was our last council meeting. At which time, on the 15th, I took part in a regional, across the region, welcome video for a number of Afghan refugees that were scheduled to come into the region. On that same day, the CAO and I had a meeting with the Niagara Regional Native Center. We talked about the MOU that the CEO spoke to earlier. And also, you will recall that the call to action that is outlined in the Truth and Reconciliation documents speaks frequently about skills-based training in intercultural competency. And so that is what we are committing to. And that was the source of the real core of that discussion. Coming together with Indigenous peoples in healing and reconciliation projects is a beginning, and it allows us to learn and to share with guidance. And we have already indicated that we accept the truths about residential schools and the Indigenous people and the community genocide that was the result of that. Ensuring that we repeat the historic truth, and through the stories that they share with us, we are commemorating also Indigenous sites in our community, and the park in the Jordan Valley is a very, very excellent example of that. So there will be more to report on that, and there will be more opportunities for us all to come together as we learn more. We met with the Solicitor General, Sylvia Jones, regarding a municipal firefighter certification, on a firefighter certification technical briefing. There was a very, very good, I thought, excellent attendance at the Master Open House on the streetscape for Ontario Street. It was a little different group than attended the week before. And I thought the results were quite good as a beginning. And I know that there's going to be a good deal more that comes out of this. Myself and other councillors attended the Navigating Conflict Relationships as an elected official. This was a two-part that was being offered through AMO. It was very, very well attended and very useful strategies. COVID business cycle meeting was attended. I attended that. It was the internal response group, and discussions were held that really related directly to the provincial and regional directives that change pretty frequently and were available at that time. The aggregate task force meeting was one that was made up of members of the top aggregate producing municipalities of Ontario. I attended that with the rest of my colleagues on the executive. We had a briefing on the newest changes to the legislation, the draft changes, and it was the representatives from the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forests. And it had a great deal to do with the filling of quarries through site alteration. Some of you will certainly be very well aware of the work and cost that has been brought to the town on site alteration issues that don't relate to quarries and relate to other sites in the town. So there was a very, very strong message that went back through the staff member to the minister that these regulations are fine as long as you enforce them. And so overall, it was quite a positive meeting. And I think the outcomes for the industry are quite positive. And so this is certainly not an issue that we have had with quarries in our community, but other areas, of course, are in question. On the 22nd and 23rd of February, we had the Benchlands Tourism Summit. It was very well attended. I heard some excellent comments from people that had attended it for the first time and were exposed to our tourism initiatives for the first time. They felt that they really got a great deal out of it. We flew the flag for Scout Week during this period, and there was a Ward 1 meeting with citizens during that week. And now we've actually, for the benefit of the community, all ward meetings have been held, and they were very, very well attended. And whether it was an open mic or whether there was more structure to it, there were a great deal of similar items that were discussed. And I think that these, again, are an excellent example of two-way communication and how people in this community are supported regardless of their views. The Mayor's Advisory Council on Coastal Resilience also met. I was selected as the chair, replacing Sanderson of Collingwood, and we are now sending forward the Canadian recommendations to the Great Lakes Cities initiative. The Lincoln Chamber After 5 also met, and the meeting was held at the museum. And I would encourage you, if you haven't, to go down and see the exhibits that are up right now. They're really quite interesting. There's one on deaf, and there's so many dimensions to it, and it's so touching because it's so local. It's really very, very beautifully done. Some wonderful artifacts are on display as part of that. We had a CIP update, as the councils would remember, and at another meeting, we had a discussion on the flooding that was taking place both north and south, but particularly on the south side of the Fly Road, and we included the Conservation Authority in that discussion. And there will be some ground truthing that's going to go on. Mr. Graham will be involved in that, and then a work plan will be established. On March the 2nd, the Meals on Wheels flag raising took place, and I think we have 3 councillors who attended. Councillors Brunei and Mikulik, who actually delivered Meals on Wheels, and also Councillor Timmers was in attendance. I had a discussion that I've already reported to the councillors on with MPP Nina Tangri, who is the Minister of Small Business and Red Tape. The Agriculture Policy and Action Committee met last Friday. 4 items that were discussed were the regional official plan, irrigation, and you heard the correspondence this evening on that. Water access to byline growers on 4th Avenue was also discussed. The town has been heavily involved in the progress there, and it is very much appreciated. And also, I had specifically asked that the discussion about site alteration be examined as a role of an agri-region council as opposed to the local municipalities. Chair Bradley agrees with that, so we're going to see where we're going to go with that. I think that in terms of the discussion that we had earlier, this is to members of the public, that speaking to the issue of balance in terms of local planning is very, very important. I encourage you to continue to be involved and express your interest and your ideas. I think we saw that coming out of the review on Ontario Street, that there are people that have some creative ideas. But we are certainly looking at smaller footprints, and there are people that have certainly expressed this. Certainly fairness for all is certainly that comes up. Diversity, equity around the availability of housing. A shared future is a common theme. Jobs creation, business development and expansion. Good health that comes from walkable communities and safe communities. The road redevelopment that we've talked about and that we're planning for. Also, information out of population health on obesity rates that we need to understand as part and parcel of the kind of planning that we're doing. as well as the support to the early childhood development indicators. There has been lessening of pandemic controls and measures. And I just want to remind everyone that your experiences are all different. Unfortunately, there are still some deaths and still threats to families in particular. We remain hopeful that what we have now is a level playing field regionally and provincially, and that we can all continue to encourage ourselves and others to follow public health guidelines around hand washing and masks and distancing where your own judgment dictates. The vaccinations continue with the GoVax clinics in Lincoln. I want to thank the staff again for continuing with these. There's a substantial number of that are attending, and we certainly don't want to prematurely stop those. We don't need an appointment, and there's a good flow. And so it doesn't take up a great deal of time. I encourage everyone to put themselves into the situation of others, to be empathetic. It's an important time to do that. Get your own boosters, and let's see if we can't tampen down these results even further. Tonight, I want to acknowledge the Ukraine. I certainly don't need to be finding news to repeat to you. You've seen that over and over again. But I want to acknowledge the care and concern that we have with our own Ukrainian community, and to acknowledge all of them and the pain that they must be feeling and the worry that they have for their loved ones in Ukraine. The citizens of Lincoln and Niagara are here willing, able to contribute. And we have had requests, and we are certainly moving forward to make sure those contributions are available. I want to close by speaking about March break. I can't believe we're around in March break again. And I asked Shannon today, Ms. Mackay today, to give me just some quick updates, just to remind people, if you're going to be home with your children over the holidays, there's a steam-powered March break camp that's at the Museum and Culture Center. It's all about color, make paints, mix colors, explore the way that light can change the way we see at steam-powered camp, and kids can get creative and get their hands dirty with science and art. And that's the 14th to the 18th. And you can register by calling 905-563-2799, extension 319, in person at the Lincoln Museum or Fleming Center, or online. And then there's a March break camp. It's ages 4 to 12. It's on March 14th to March 18th as well, with games and crafts and lots of hands-on fun. Register online or in person at the Fleming Center. And in the same period, March 14th to the 18th, sorry, this is for age 4 to 12. It was for 4 to 12 before. It was 6 to 12, the STEAM camp. So this final one, and I know they're all there and you can all read them, but I just want to stir people up a bit. The spring program, the camp is 4 to 12, and that's the game. So spring break program registration, it opened today at 9 o'clock. So if you get onto it tonight or tomorrow, you should be able to get in line. So I really encourage everybody to come out, and you've got a little bit of advance notice now. So I hope that hope that everybody has a great spring break, including our staff. I think everybody's ready for a rest. So that's the end of my report, and thank you very much, councillors. Thank you very much, citizens. And I'll turn now to item 15.2, which is the regional council update, and Councillor Foster.
Yes, thank you, Mary Easton. Good evening, everybody. I sent out a report earlier today, and not a lot to add to it from the last couple of weeks. I will tell you, I was chairing the AMO Digital Task Force meeting this morning. The issue that's going on within the Digital Task Force is e-permitting. and this is in and around the building side of things. We've been examining solutions and have come up with solutions that are being piloted. I do know the town of Lincoln has looked at this as well, and I applaud going down that road. The solutions that appear to be coming into play are quite quite substantive, I would say, if you want to put it that way. So anyway, good stuff going on in that area. We're dealing with at Corporate Services Wednesday, we're dealing with the year-end numbers. We're going to be getting into, I'll call it the silly season argument about surpluses that may or may not have come out of the year 2021. The reality, by the way, with Niagara Region is that reserves are now approaching a level that I know the town of Lincoln has been able to sustain for some time through an awful lot of hard work. And regional council has been able to get there as well. I do say, however, it's bit by maybe good luck as well as funding that we have received in and around the COVID crisis that that have been able to substantiate some of those figures. But one of the things, or there's a few things that are going on at the region that have to be looked at over the course of the next few months. One is there remains a significant infrastructure deficit within Niagara Region. We've talked about that before, that have come in and through the various reports that we've got, and we need to be moving forward in a variety of areas. And of course, we're all quite aware of the infrastructure deficit, even with some of the road projects within our municipality. The province is opening up, but there still remains costs that are coming into play. Niagara Region has had to put additional monies into community services in and around homelessness support and in and around treatment centers. This is an important part, and it's one of those pieces of the puzzle that's never really talked about. But there is some extremely good work that's being done by the region in these areas of, I would say, community need, if you want to put it that way. And of course, we have the hospitals and hospice support that the Niagara Region has agreed to be funding. So those pieces of the puzzle are still coming into play. The big argument this week, argument slash discussion slash piece of the puzzle is going to be urban boundary expansion, something that we know in the town of Lincoln isn't possible because of Greenbelt, but there are other municipalities within Niagara that urban boundary expansion is being considered. Lots of opinions coming from the public in particular on this particular issue. However, there makes an awful lot of sense given the development pressures that are coming on to Niagara, to say the least. We're going to also be bringing up at Public Works the question about Vision Zero again, and I have to say to Lincoln Council once again, thank you for the unanimous support of Vision Zero in a recent motion that was done by Council, and the expectation is that this will be getting onto the rails, probably without our friends from Grimsby being involved, but we shall see where this is all going to land, as it is a major regional initiative that's being moved forward. And I just, of course, JD knows this. I've always loved these councillor remuneration reports that come in and through, and the one for the region's coming through this week. And I just want to tell you that I am not top of the list. I'm in the middle somewhere, but I want to congratulate Mayor Easton. She came in with the lowest expenses of any regional councillor. So that means you guys at the town picked up all of her expenses. So thank you very much. I appreciate that. So, and that's my report.
Staying home saves money, Councillor. All right, thank you very much, Councillor Foster. Questions of the councillor? I think you're going to get off late tonight, Councillor Foster.
Yeah, that's a nice change. Thank you.
Okay, I have a motion. If I can find it. I have a motion that's moved by Councillor Reimer, seconded by Councillor Pachariva. The council receive and file as information the following reports of municipal officers, mayor's report, and regional council update. Madam Clerk, would you please call the vote?
Councillor Russell,
Yes.
Councillor Brunet,
Yes.
Councillor Miklick,
Yes.
Councillor Reimer,
Yes.
Councillor Rajima,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Councillor McPherson,
Yes.
Councillor Pachariva,
Yes.
Councillor Timmers,
Yes.
and Mayor Easton.
Support.
And that carries.
Good night, guys.
Good night, Councillor. All right, now I'm moving on to item 15.3, the 2022 municipal election alternative voting methods and election update. The report is LS-02-22, and this was forwarded from our previous COW meeting. Madam Clerk, would you please provide comments?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Through you to the councillors. The purpose of this report is to provide information regarding the 2022 municipal and school board election being held on October 24th, 2022, including legislative changes, alternative voting methods, and key dates. The Municipal Elections Act permits municipalities to make use of alternative voting methods and vote counting equipment such as voting machines, voting recorders, optical scanning, vote tabulators for municipal and school board elections. Council is required to pass a bylaw by May 1st, 2022. There was a survey created to receive input from the public on the preferred method of voting, and that was open from September to November of 2021, including was included on the town's official public engagement site on Speak Up Lincoln. And as the elections officer, I have put forward my recommendation, and I require approval from council to pass a bylaw with respect to the recommendation I have put forward. I can take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. I just want to make a clarification for council. Our role this evening is to pass the bylaw, is that correct?
It's to approve the bylaw that I am recommending, yes.
Right. And so,
which will be at a subsequent meeting.
Okay. And our questions then are about clarity?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Because the report sets out your highest and best recommendations. Do I have that right in clerk talk?
That is correct, Madam Mayor.
Okay. All right. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Njima.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On page 2 of the report, the 5th bullet, that is page 2, the 5th bullet, special voting opportunities. What is that exactly?
Special voting opportunities through the mayor to the councillor. So those would be our special locations that we call, such as group homes and other facilities.
Okay. And Madam Mayor, I do have another question.
Sure, go ahead.
So we know that there's a certain number of people that do come out and vote and did vote in the 2018 election. Do we have demographic stats on who the active voters are? And if so, are we able to extrapolate out of that some demographic and other information about those that did not vote?
Right. So through the mayor to the councillor. So I tried to decipher some of that information through the survey. You know, as council can see in the report, we didn't get a lot of response through the survey to decipher some of that demographic information. It's possible that I probably could pull some of that information, but I need to ensure that it's not infringing on people's privacy.
It's a tough question, but a part of looking at this whole process is to find ways to encourage and make it easier for people to vote that otherwise aren't voting. And I know that It went up, the percentage went up between 2014 and 2018 by about 2%, which doesn't sound like a lot if you think about 2, but it's actually a pretty good achievement, I would say, to get that much more of the population out. So all of the options that are in the report rely on Canada Post to a certain extent to get the information out to people that they need in order to vote. And I know that's imperfect, of course, it's complicated. And I know that we do encourage eligible voters to contact the town if they don't get their voter information through Canada Post. But people are busy and election day can come up quickly and be over without some people even finding themselves realizing they're missing something and then taking the steps to figure out how to get that thing that they're missing and then taking the steps to get the thing. If you're busy with work, you're busy with a young family, easily voting can drop to the bottom of the list. And one thing that goes with people from place to place, no matter how often they move, is a personal email address. Have we considered doing a group mail out reminding people that election day is coming? And if you haven't received your information, here's what to do.
Thank you. Through the mayor to the councillor. So all great points. So we are looking to enhance our communication tools and launch our website a lot earlier. We're hoping for that at the end of March, and utilizing MPAC voter lookup to engage all necessary eligible voters, working with the region, also the local area municipalities, working with all communication departments in order to get the word out and promote the municipal election as much as possible through various channels. So the traditional methods of newspaper, radio, social media. We can't utilize personal email addresses, Councillor Ujima, unless somebody gives us their permission to do so. It's just not something that we can do. There is a global paper shortage. And so, you know, in light of COVID and all suppliers. And so we're dealing with that. As in the past in all municipal elections, there is, you know, the challenges that we have with Canada Post, and sometimes there is the potential strike, if you will, and that seems to also play a part sometimes right before an election. So, you know, it leaves us looking at different alternatives. So we will utilize as much communication tools as necessary in order to get the word out, all of the information. We're looking at revamping, like I said, our website to ensure that we have some worthwhile engagement going on all the time. And so that will be throughout the year.
Yeah, it's just the question of how to get them out the information that they need. It's a constant review every election period just to make sure everybody's getting the information that they need. But you know, I believe that the way to increase voter turnout is by increasing resident engagement, and we do that throughout the year. Interested people will find a way to get that information. So they need to be reminded and they need to be engaged, because if they're not engaged, they're not interested, they're not going to vote. So I think a lot of what we do through the year, and we do it well in terms of engaging residents, is a big part of the picture. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Mr. Deanne.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you to the councillor. Just to add on what Madam Clerk just said, engagement and informing our residents of our municipality of the upcoming election is paramount. And just want to remind council, we are scheduled for our next council newsletter to be going out to our community at the end of April, and we'll be ensured to include a lot of information about the upcoming election on that as well. So thanks for that, Madam Mayor.
That's helpful. Did you have another question, Councillor Njima? Go ahead.
I think in the last newsletter, it's just over here, but we included the ward boundary maps, and that's a question every election. People don't know what the ward boundaries are. So I just want to ask that that be included again so that people see it on a regular basis. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Councillor Nicolai.
Thank you very much. Through you to our town clerk, Julie. Appreciate the effort you're going through with this. It's a lot of work. I'm trying to do this, and I just, in reading that report, are there firm, like in terms of the mailing or mail ballots or this and that, have you established a firm, or are you coming back to council with, so there will be mail-in ballots, there will be all this, or, okay, then all right, there must have been, maybe perhaps there was too much written in that report and I was reading too much.
So through,
go ahead.
thank you, through the mayor to the councillor. Those were the methods that were provided in the survey.
Okay.
Those are the alternative voting methods. So take out the traditional in-person. The alternative voting methods were listed as such. Mail-in ballots being one of those alternatives. I put forward a recommendation for internet voting rather than mail-in ballots. Like I had just mentioned earlier, there is a global paper shortage, and I am not recommending that at this time.
Okay. Okay, I'm glad I clarified that. And yeah, I'm hoping that with things opening up and there being a bit of a change with COVID and how it's been progressing, that perhaps you will be able to come in under budget this election the same way you did the last one. So good luck with this moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Minchima, am I seeing you again? No. Okay.
Sorry, I left it up by mistake.
That's okay. Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Madam Clerk, just a quick question on the dates for internet voting. I know that last go around, it was still new, and I know campaigning, there's a lot of concerns that I had heard, and I think other councillors raised about, again, being a little bit too late because people had internet voted. We didn't realize how popular it was going to be. Are we going to either push that window for internet voting closer to election date and maybe close it down a bit, or are we still going to have a 2-week window? I think it was October 3rd last year that, or last election that it started. Are we going to push that closer to the election just to make sure that everybody's being a little bit as efficient as possible while campaigning?
Mm-hmm. So, you know, the first possible date to hold an advanced vote under the Municipal Elections Act as it currently stands is September 24th. There's some timing in there, Councillor, due to the fact that, you know, our voters list is made available from MPAC at a certain point in September. And so there is the rush for us clerks to review that list and to ensure that other counts, well, all of the candidates receive a copy of that voters list. And so there is a point where we have to work very quickly. But that's not to say that we can't move up the advanced voting day for sure. It just has to be within that legislated time frame. I can't go any sooner. And the way that I am recommending this again is that we cut off the internet voting during the after the advanced polls finish. There's about a 5-day window there where we take a look at the final voters list, and that goes out to all of the polls on election day with already the voters who have previously voted stricken off the list. And it worked well in 2018, and I plan on doing that again. There's also the added benefit where, Councillor, where we don't get caught up in the upload of what happened to most municipalities that were facing that at the end of voting night. So we were lucky enough that we weren't one of them.
Okay, through you, Madam Mayor. Again, my question wasn't to move it up. I think it was to move it back closer to election day. So it maybe or and condense the time. I think it was open for 2 weeks, internet voting last time. Is that still a requirement, or is there any thought to maybe making 1 week and having it close a few days before the election to allow that upload? Just to give, again, not as much of a time gap between when internet voting starts to the election day. I think last time it was almost the 3rd to the 22nd. It's almost 3 weeks.
It would be my recommendation, Councillor, that we keep it open though during those 2 weeks to make it as accessible as possible to all eligible voters. You know, it would be my recommendation to make it accessible for as long as possible.
Last question, Madam Mayor, do you have the results from the last election of the number of people that voted during those 2 weeks of, not like who voted for who, but just in those 12 or 14 days, when did the people actually vote? Just so we can look at the data. Maybe that'll give us a better picture.
Yeah, I believe that's in the report on page 2, internet voting, electors voted. So there was a number of, 2,345 voters turned out for internet voting.
No, I know that's great, but I'm thinking like, when did they vote? Did they vote the last 2 days internet voting was open? Did they vote? Like, can we get a breakdown of when they voted in that period? Do you have that?
I don't have it tonight, but
No.
I can definitely see if I can drill down to that. I'm not sure. I'd have to go back to what the system generated, and I'm not sure if I can drill it down to that detail.
Yeah, I'd just be curious, like if 85% of the people voted in the last 3 days and nobody voted the first week, maybe that's an indication that that 2 week period is not necessarily needed as large as it is.
Okay, we'll leave that with the clerk then and see what she can find. Is that okay, Councillor? Yes, good. Okay, perfect. All right, anything else? I don't see any other hands. All right, I have a motion then moved by Councillor Russell, seconded by Councillor McPherson. The council receive and file this information report LS-02-22 2022 municipal election alternative voting methods and election update, and that council approve electronic voting, internet voting as the alternative voting method for the 2022 municipal and school board election, and direct staff to provide a bylaw to a future meeting of council for enactment. Madam Clerk, would you please carry out the vote?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Councillor Regima?
Yes.
Councillor Miklick?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Brunet?
Yes.
Councillor Reimer?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Councillor McPherson?
Yes.
Councillor Russell?
Yes.
Councillor Pachariva?
Yes.
Councillor Timmers?
Yes.
And Mayor Easton?
Support.
And that carries.
Item number 16 is motion to consider confidential items, and we have none this evening. 17, motion to approve bylaws. We have 3 bylaws for consideration today. Do members have any questions? Councillor Regina, which bylaw?
Okay. Okay. It is bylaw 2022-17, Madam Mayor. And the question is this the severance of the piece of property for the stormwater management pond? I'm wondering, is that so that it can be assumed by the town, or what is the reasoning for that severance?
Okay, this is trench line, correct? Ms. Dale? Is that right? Is this the trench line, Jordan project?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I believe this is the trench line Urca Holdings property on Bartlett Road.
Bartlett, okay. Okay, what is your question, Councillor Regina?
So the bylaw is to authorize the execution of a site plan agreement. And in paragraph 1, it says that the Urca Holdings has applied to the town of Lincoln for approval to sever the existing office building and construction yard for trench lines and construct a new stormwater management pond. So I guess I'm wondering about the need for the severance, that's all. I'm curious.
Okay, all right. Can you help us with that this evening, Ms. Dale?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So Trenchline Urca Holdings, I believe it's also in a numbered company. They actually own 2 properties on Bartlett Road, and they did do a boundary adjustment between the 2 of them. So they are going through site plan approval for an industrial building. And there would, my understanding is there's also a stormwater management pond associated with one of those properties. So the purpose of the site plan agreement is not for the severance, because the severance would have went through the committee of adjustment. It's for the construction of the office building.
So it was just a boundary adjustment.
Yeah, they did do a boundary adjustment between their 2 properties because they owned 2 properties along Bartlett Road, just north of Green Lane.
Okay. I was just wondering if it had something particularly to do with the stormwater management pond being constructed. No. But not. So thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, I have a motion moved by Councillor Russell and seconded by Councillor Regina, that leave be given to approve the following bylaws. 22-15, bylaw to establish a joint library between Town of Lincoln and Town of Pelham under Union Public Library Board, and repeal all Lincoln Public Library Board bylaw. 2022-16, bylaw to adopt an interim control bylaw under section 38 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, CP 13 as amended. 2022-17, bylaw to authorize the execution of a site plan agreement between the Corporation of the Town of Lincoln, Urca Holdings, Inc., together with any and all mortgagees that may be entitled at the point of registration of the agreement. Madam Clerk, would you please call out the vote?
Councillor Brunei,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Councillor McPherson,
Yes.
Councillor Pachariva,
Yes.
Councillor Miklik,
Yes.
Councillor Regina,
Yes.
Councillor Timmers,
Yes.
Councillor Russell,
Yes.
Councillor Reimer,
Yes.
Mayor Easton,
Support.
carried.
Item 18 is a motion to confirm the proceedings of council. We will now confirm the proceedings of the special council meeting. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Timmers and seconded by Councillor Reimer, that leave be given to introduce bylaw number 2022-18, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of special council at its meeting held Monday, March the 7th, 2022, being read a first and second and third time. That bylaw number 2022-18 be enacted and passed, and that the mayor and clerk sign and seal the said bylaw. Madam Clerk, would you please call out the vote?
Thank you, Councillor Reimer.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Russell,
Yes.
Councillor Miklik,
Yes.
Councillor Pachariva,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Councillor McPherson,
Yes.
Councillor Regina,
Yes.
Councillor Timmers,
Yes.
Councillor Brunei,
Yes.
Mayor Easton,
Support.
that carries.
Thank you. And before we adjourn the meeting, do members have any comments? I see none. Deputy Mayor McPherson, I have a request from some community members regarding the change in the postal codes. I don't know if others, if no one else has this to deal with, I'll deal with it offside. Anybody else has had any requests about this? But no?
No,
I have not personally.
Okay, Councillor Regina?
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize my mic was on. I was just mumbling to myself. I see a lot of talk about it on social media, but nobody has reached out directly.
Okay, I've had 2 people reach out to me, and one had to do with change in postal codes because of costs and inconvenience and that sort of thing. But the one that, and those are all very important. There's no question about it. It's going to be inconvenient and it will cost businesses. However, the one that I did not have an answer to is whether or not the address would change from Beamsville or Vineland or Jordan to Lincoln. And I don't know who on staff, Mr. CAO, would be able to answer this, because it's not really a municipal matter, but we are the place that people turn.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm gonna let Director Wagner maybe take a stab at this, but before he does, I think, in my past experience, I think whether Lincoln is used, whether Jordan, Beamsville, Vineland are used, they still end up going to the same place. And so I would, I would hazard to guess that there isn't an issue and that those can be used interchangeably. At least that's my experience to date. But I'll look to Director Wagner and his experience with our taxation group, and he may have something to add.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Wagner.
Be quite honest, I know Rosalie is managing this from the controllership perspective to make sure our billing and such go up, but I couldn't answer you honestly whether or not it's changing from Beamsville to Lincoln. I'll have to get back to council on that answer if I can.
That's great. Thank you very much. All right. I have a motion to adjourn, moved by Councillor Wajima, seconded by Councillor Mikulik. The special council meeting on March the 7th, 2022 be adjourned at 20:51 p.m. Pretty good, eh, Councillor Katarina? I know he's been just jumping around in his seat all night. Madam Clerk, would you please call out the vote?
Deputy Mayor Councillor McPherson,
Yes.
Councillor Pachariva,
Yes.
Councillor Mikulik,
Yes.
Councillor Rajima,
Yes.
Councillor Reimer,
Yes.
Councillor Russell,
Yes.
Councillor Brunei,
Yes.
Councillor Timmers,
Yes.
Mayor Easton,
Support. Thank
and
you.
that carries.
Thank you, everyone. This concludes our special council meeting for this evening. Thank you for joining us, and just stay safe. Thank you, councilors. Thanks.
Good night, all.